30 seconds into your job interview, and the interviewer asks the one question you didn't prepare for. Your English is fine on a normal day, so why does it suddenly feel like it's abandoning you right when you need it most? Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Signal. I'm Ella, and this is episode 4. Today we're tackling something that combines everything we've covered so far: confidence, vocabulary, and handling pressure, all inside one high-stakes situation: the English job interview. Whether it's your first interview or your 15th, interview English has its own rhythm, its own phrases, and its own traps. Let's break it all down. Let's start with the opening, because first impressions genuinely shape how the rest of the interview goes. When asked, "Tell me about yourself," so many people either freeze or, worse, just repeat their resume line by line. That's a missed opportunity. The interviewer already has your resume. They want to hear your story, told with confidence. A strong structure looks like this: present, past, future. Start with what you're doing now, briefly mention relevant past experience, then connect it to why you're excited about this role. For example, currently I'm working as a marketing associate, where I focus on social media campaigns. Before that, I completed my degree in communications, which really shaped my interest in digital strategy. And that's actually what draws me to this role. I'd love to bring that experience into a bigger, more strategic position like this one. Notice how that flows as a story, not a list. It's confident, it's structured, and it directly connects your background to the job you're applying for. Let's talk about a phrase that trips up so many candidates: talking about weaknesses. "What's your biggest weakness?" is famously tricky because people either lie unconvincingly, like saying, "I'm a perfectionist," as if it's secretly a strength, or they overshare something genuinely damaging. Here's a better approach. Pick something real, but frame it around growth. For example, earlier in my career, I found it difficult to delegate tasks. I wanted to control every detail. But I've been actively working on this by trusting my team more and focusing on outcomes rather than micromanaging the process. See the structure? Honest weakness, followed by concrete action you're taking to improve. That's what interviewers are actually listening for. Useful phrases for this section. One area I've been working on is, something I'm actively improving is, I used to struggle with, but I've found that. These phrases signal self-awareness and growth, which matters far more than pretending to be flawless. Now let's talk about describing your strengths and achievements, because this is where so many learners, especially from cultures that value modesty, hold themselves back too much. In an English language interview, especially in Western business culture, appropriate confidence is expected, not seen as arrogance. Saying, "I'm quite good at problem solving," isn't bragging. It's simply answering the question directly. A strong way to describe an achievement uses what's called the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. For example, in my last role, we were facing a tight deadline on a client project. That's the situation. I was responsible for coordinating between 3 departments. That's the task. I set up a shared tracking system and daily 10-minute check-ins. That's the action. As a result, we delivered the project 2 days early, and the client extended their contract. That's the result. That's a complete, compelling answer, and it follows a structure interviewers are specifically trained to listen for. Let's talk about a moment that terrifies almost everyone: when you don't understand the question. Here's the truth: asking for clarification is not a weakness, it's a sign of careful listening. The worst thing you can do is guess and answer the wrong question entirely. Useful phrases. Could you clarify what you mean by that? Just to make sure I understand, are you asking about, would you mind rephrasing that? These phrases sound confident and professional, not confused or unprepared. Let's cover salary discussions too, since this makes almost everyone nervous, in any language. If asked about salary expectations early, I'd like to learn more about the role first, but I'm confident we can find a number that works for both of us. This buys you time without dodging the question rudely. If pushed for a specific range, based on my research and experience, I'm looking at a range of X to Y, but I'm open to discussing based on the full compensation package. Notice full compensation package, a natural, professional phrase that signals you understand benefits matter beyond just base salary. Let's do a full role play now, bringing together several of these techniques in a realistic exchange. So, tell me a bit about yourself. Sure. Currently, I'm working as a project coordinator at a logistics company, where I manage timelines across multiple teams. Before that, I studied business administration, which gave me a strong foundation in operations. What really draws me to this role is the chance to apply that experience at a larger scale, with more cross-functional collaboration. That's great. Can you tell me about a time you handled a difficult situation at work? Absolutely. In my last role, we had a supplier delay that threatened our biggest client's deadline. I coordinated an emergency call between our team and the supplier, renegotiated the timeline, and kept the client updated daily. In the end, we only missed the original deadline by 1 day, and the client actually praised our communication throughout the process. And what would you say is an area you're working on improving? Honestly, earlier in my career, I struggled with delegating. I wanted to handle everything myself. I've since learned to trust my team more, and it's actually made our whole department more efficient. Great, thank you. Do you have any questions for us? Yes, actually. What does success look like in this role after the first 6 months? Notice that final question. Asking a thoughtful question back is genuinely one of the most underrated interview skills. It shows engagement, not desperation. Let's talk about that specifically. Questions to ask at the end. Avoid generic ones like, "What's the company culture like?" It's fine, but overused. Stronger options. What does success look like in this role after 6 months? What are the biggest challenges someone in this position typically faces? How would you describe the team's working style? These questions signal genuine strategic thinking, not just polite formality. Let's also talk about a moment many people dread, being asked, "Why did you leave your last job?" Especially if the circumstances weren't ideal. The golden rule here: never speak negatively about a previous employer, no matter how justified it might feel. Interviewers notice this, and it raises a quiet red flag about how you might talk about them one day. Instead, frame it around growth and direction. I really valued my time there, but I felt ready for a role with more ownership over projects. Or, I was looking for an opportunity to grow into a role like this one, which wasn't available at my previous company. Notice both examples focus forward, toward what you're seeking, rather than backward, toward what went wrong. If you were let go, or the circumstances were genuinely difficult, honesty still matters, but keep it brief and professional. The company went through a restructuring, and my position was affected. It gave me the chance to think carefully about what I want next, which is actually part of why this role interests me. Short, factual, and immediately redirected toward the future. That's the key formula. Let's also cover video interviews specifically, since these have become extremely common and have their own small but important English nuances. Useful phrases for technical hiccups. "Sorry, you cut out for a second there. Could you repeat that last part?" Or, "I think there might be a slight delay on my end. Apologies." These are completely normal, commonly used phrases. Nobody expects a flawless video call. Also, in video interviews, brief filler phrases become even more important, since visual cues like nodding are less effective through a screen. Phrases like, "That's a great question. Let me think about that for a moment," give you processing time while still sounding engaged rather than silent and awkward. Let's talk about closing the interview strongly, too. This final moment often gets rushed, but it's a real opportunity. A strong closing line: "Thank you so much for your time today. I'm even more excited about this role after our conversation, and I look forward to hearing from you." Simple, warm, and it reinforces genuine interest without sounding desperate or overly rehearsed. Before we get to vocabulary, let's talk about how to actually practice interview English on your own, without hiring a coach or finding a practice partner every time. First tip: record yourself answering common questions like, "Tell me about yourself," and "Why do you want this role?" out loud. Then listen back. You'll immediately notice filler words, rushed pacing, or unclear structure. Things that are hard to catch while you're speaking, but obvious once you hear them played back. Second tip: build a small bank of 3 or 4 strong stories from your experience using the STAR method, and practice adapting them to different questions. Most interview questions, no matter how they're phrased, are really just asking for evidence of your skills. The same story can often answer multiple questions with small adjustments. Third tip: practice out loud, not just in your head. There's a big difference between thinking through an answer and actually saying it smoothly. Your mouth and brain need the same rehearsal a musician gives a difficult passage. Repetition builds fluency under pressure. Let's do our word deep dive for today. The phrase, "bring to the table," meaning what value or skills you contribute. I believe my analytical background is something I can really bring to the table here. It's an extremely common phrase in professional English, especially in interviews. Let's add a second: hit the ground running, meaning to start performing effectively right away without a long adjustment period. I'm confident I can hit the ground running in this role, given my background. And a third: wear many hats, meaning to handle multiple different responsibilities, common in smaller companies or startups. In my current role, I wear many hats, from managing budgets to coordinating with vendors. It's a natural, commonly used phrase that sounds far more professional than listing out every single responsibility separately. A quick pronunciation note: the word experience is often rushed by nervous speakers. Slow it down slightly. Experience. 4 clear syllables, rather than mumbling it into 2. Let's do a quick listener mailbag question. Someone asks, "What if I genuinely don't have much experience for the role I'm interviewing for? How do I talk about that honestly without sounding unqualified?" Great question, and very common, especially for early career candidates. The key is reframing. Instead of apologizing for lack of experience, focus on transferable skills and eagerness to learn. For example, "While I haven't worked in this exact role before, I did lead a similar project during my internship, where I managed a small team under a tight deadline, and I'm genuinely excited to build on that experience here." Notice there's no apology, no, "I'm sorry I don't have much experience," just a confident bridge from what you do have to what the role needs. All right, let's lock in today's key takeaways with a quick recap. Number 1, structure your introduction as present, past, future, not a resume readout. Number 2, frame weaknesses around growth and concrete action, not fake humility. Number 3, Use the STAR method for achievement questions: situation, task, action, result. Number 4. Asking for clarification sounds confident, not confused. And number 5. Always ask a thoughtful question at the end, not just a generic one. Here's your homework for this episode. Write out your own present, past, future introduction and say it out loud at least 3 times until it flows naturally without sounding memorized. Remember, interviewers aren't expecting perfect grammar. They're listening for clarity, confidence, and whether you can communicate your value. That's a skill you can absolutely build, one practice session at a time. That's it for episode 4. Next episode, we're covering something that comes up constantly in daily life: handling phone calls in English, both formal and informal. If this episode helped, share it with someone preparing for an interview soon. And drop a comment. What's the interview question that makes you most nervous? I'll pick a few for our next mailbag segment. See you in the next episode. Bye for now, and go get that job.